Ethan Carter had just returned to his hometown after months of deployment overseas. The bustling streets and familiar sights were a relief, but there was an underlying heaviness in his heart. War had a way of doing that. As he walked into the local grocery store, he hoped for a quiet, simple trip, just a few items to get him through the week. At the checkout, Ethan's eyes were drawn to a woman struggling with her groceries. Rachel Parker, a single mother, stood with her small daughter clinging to her side, her face etched with exhaustion. Rachel fumbled through her purse, clearly counting her change, and looked up with a mix of worry and frustration. Her card had been declined, and the pile of groceries before her was just out of reach. Ethan didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, quietly swiping his card and paying for her items. Rachel blinked in surprise, the weight of her embarrassment heavy in her eyes. "You don't have to do that," she murmured. But Ethan simply smiled. "It's no trouble at all. Sometimes we all need a little help." Rachel's heart raced, her cheeks flushed with both gratitude and embarrassment. She had no idea how to respond. The weight of the groceries was nothing compared to the overwhelming relief she felt. I don't know what to say," she stammered, looking up at Ethan with watery eyes. "I'll pay you back, I swear. As soon as I can," Ethan smiled warmly, his eyes soft with understanding. "Don't worry about it," he said gently. "I was raised to help people when I can. No one's alone in this world, not if we can help it." Rachel swallowed the lump in her throat. He didn't look at her like she was a burden. He didn't judge her for struggling. He was just a stranger offering kindness without expecting anything in return. They exchanged a few more words as Ethan bagged her groceries, both of them finding a brief moment of peace in the midst of their hectic lives. Rachel shared that her husband had passed away suddenly a year ago, leaving her to raise their daughter Lily on her own. The past months had been a blur of working long hours just to keep food on the table and bills paid. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't helped today," Rachel said, her voice cracking slightly. Ethan gave a reassuring nod. "Take care of yourself, you'll get through it." As Rachel left the store, she promised herself that one day she'd find a way to repay this stranger's incredible kindness. Ethan's time at home was brief, and soon he found himself back on the front lines, facing the uncertainty and danger of war once again. Every day was a struggle, his life hanging in the balance as he navigated through volatile missions. Yet despite the chaos surrounding him, there were moments when his mind drifted back to that simple encounter at the grocery store. The image of Rachel, her tired eyes and the small, grateful smile she had given him, stayed with him. It was a reminder of why he fought, of the people he was protecting, even if he had no idea who they were. Every so often, during long nights in foreign lands, he would think of her and her daughter, wondering how they were doing, hoping they had found a way to cope with their struggles. Back home, life had not been easy for Rachel. She worked long hours at 2 different jobs, her body often aching from the strain. But slowly, bit by bit, she started to get back on her feet. She had learned to budget more carefully, using every penny to keep her daughter fed, clothed, and safe. Yet the weight of her husband's passing, and the pressure of providing for Lily alone, never quite left her shoulders. Every day felt like a battle, but she pushed through, refusing to let life break her. One chilly autumn afternoon, a knock on the door interrupted Rachel's routine. The news that followed hit her like a punch to the gut. A soldier from their town had been critically injured in combat. The report didn't specify who it was, but Rachel's heart sank. She didn't know why, but the name of the soldier seemed to echo in her mind, and for a fleeting moment she feared it might be Ethan. Her stomach twisted in worry, and her hands shook as she clutched the newsprint. She prayed it wasn't him, but deep down she feared the worst. Days passed, but the weight of the news lingered in Rachel's chest, refusing to let her breathe easily. She couldn't shake the image of Ethan's warm smile at the grocery store, his kindness still fresh in her mind. She tried to push away the nagging worry, but it gnawed at her every moment. She knew she had to focus on her daughter, but every time the phone rang, her heart would leap into her throat. Then one afternoon, the call came. "Hello?" Rachel's voice was shaky as she answered, expecting another telemarketer or a routine call from work. "Is this Rachel Parker?" The voice on the other end was calm but strained, with a hint of sadness. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "Yes, this is she. Who's calling?" "This is Linda Carter. I'm Ethan's mother." Rachel froze. Ethan's mother, Her heart skipped a beat, the fear in her chest intensifying. Oh my God, is he okay? What's happened to him? Linda's voice wavered, but she spoke with quiet resolve. Ethan was injured in an explosion a few days ago. He's in the hospital. It's bad, Rachel. Rachel felt the world tilt beneath her, her knees buckling slightly. She pressed a hand to her forehead, feeling dizzy. I had a feeling. Is he going to be okay? He's stable for now, but the doctors say he needs extensive treatment, both physically and emotionally. The injury is severe, and he's struggling to come to terms with everything. We're doing everything we can, but he's not doing well. He asked about you. Rachel's mind spun as Linda's words sank in. She had no idea Ethan was carrying so much. Linda continued, her voice thick with emotion. I found your contact information in his notebook, under a note that said Rachel, grocery store. A reminder that kindness matters. I don't know exactly what happened between you two, but it's clear that meeting you made an impact on him. He's not asking for charity, but he needs support. And I think hearing from you might help him more than you know. Rachel's throat tightened, tears springing to her eyes. Ethan had kept that note all this time. It was a simple gesture, but it had meant something deeper to him, something Rachel hadn't realized. I'll be there, Rachel said quietly, determination settling in her chest. I'll come as soon as I can. He won't be alone. I promise. Rachel didn't waste a moment. As soon as she hung up the phone, she packed a small bag, made arrangements for Lily, and booked a flight to the military hospital. Her heart pounded with urgency. She had to see Ethan. She couldn't bear the thought of him suffering alone. He had stepped in when she was at her lowest, and now it was her turn to give back. The journey felt endless, the hours stretching as her mind raced with thoughts of Ethan. What would he look like? How much had he changed? The fear that he might not remember her, or worse, not want to see her, kept her up during the long flight. When Rachel arrived at the hospital, she was guided down narrow hallways by a nurse, her steps echoing in the quiet, sterile space. Finally she arrived at Ethan's room. When she entered, she was greeted by the sight of him sitting in a wheelchair by the window. His face was thinner than she remembered, his once strong frame now frail and weakened. The soldier who had so effortlessly carried himself just months ago now looked vulnerable, a shadow of his former self. Ethan's eyes flickered toward the door, and for a moment he stared at her in surprise, as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. Then his expression softened, his lips curving into a weak but genuine smile. Rachel, he whispered, his voice hoarse from the pain and exhaustion. What are you doing here? Rachel's heart swelled, a rush of emotion overwhelming her. She moved toward him, her voice steady but full of warmth. I couldn't just sit at home, Ethan. You helped me when I needed it. And now it's my turn to help you. She knelt down beside him, placing a gentle hand on his arm. You're not alone. I'm here. And I'll keep coming, as long as you need me. Ethan looked at her, his eyes filling with unshed tears, his voice breaking. I didn't think anyone would care. I thought I'd just be forgotten. Not a chance, Rachel said softly, her voice full of conviction. You'll never be forgotten. You matter. You're not alone anymore. Over the next few weeks, Rachel began visiting Ethan regularly. Each time she brought her daughter Lily, who quickly became a bright spot in his otherwise dark days. The little girl's laughter and energy were like rays of sunshine in the hospital room, and Ethan found himself looking forward to their visits. He could feel the strength and warmth of Rachel's support lifting him a little more each day. Slowly but surely, Ethan began to heal, not just physically, but emotionally as well. Rachel's kindness, the same kindness he had shown her, became a beacon of hope in his difficult journey to recovery. As the weeks passed, Ethan's body began to heal, but it was the emotional support Rachel provided that truly made the difference. Each visit brought more than just a friendly face. It brought hope, a reminder that he wasn't forgotten, that there was still a future worth fighting for. Rachel was a constant in his life now, a pillar of strength, and with every passing day he felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. The recovery process wasn't easy. Ethan had days where the pain was unbearable, both physically and mentally. There were moments when he wondered if he'd ever be the man he was before, but Rachel's unwavering belief in him kept him going. She never let him give up. Her encouragement was gentle but persistent, and it made all the difference. Even on his worst days, when his spirit felt low, she would remind him of how far he had come, of how much he had to live for. In the midst of all this, Rachel had found her own new path, inspired by Ethan's journey and the countless other veterans she met during her visits. She decided to become a caregiver, dedicating herself to helping other soldiers who had returned home wounded, physically and emotionally. It wasn't easy work, but Rachel poured herself into it, her compassion and kindness helping to heal others in the same way it had healed Ethan. The more she worked with these men and women, the more she realized just how powerful the human connection could be in overcoming adversity. For Ethan, Rachel's dedication gave him the strength he needed to push himself. With each visit, he started to believe in the possibility of recovery. He began physical therapy, and with Rachel's encouragement, he worked harder than he ever thought he could. It was slow, painful progress, but every step brought him closer to something he thought he might never have again. A life where he could walk, stand, and live independently. It wasn't long before the day came when Ethan stood on his own for the first time since the explosion. The years of uncertainty, fear, and pain seemed to melt away in that moment. With trembling legs but a heart full of hope, he stood upright, the weight of the world lifting off his shoulders. A year later, that moment became a reality at a community event celebrating veterans. Ethan had been invited to speak, but it wasn't just his words that had people in awe. It was the sight of him standing tall, unaided by crutches or a wheelchair. The crowd erupted in applause as he walked across the stage, his steps steady, his body stronger than ever. Rachel and Lily stood in the front row, cheering him on, tears of pride in their eyes. As Ethan looked out into the crowd, his heart swelled with emotion. He had made it, not just because of his own strength, but because of the kindness that had been given to him, and the kindness he had learned to pass forward. In that moment, Ethan realized that life had a way of returning what you gave, sometimes in unexpected ways, but always in ways that could change everything. Months passed, and Ethan's recovery continued to exceed expectations. He was stronger than ever, both physically and emotionally, and it was clear that he had found a renewed sense of purpose. Yet, there was something more he wanted to do, something that had been stirring in his heart ever since Rachel had come into his life. One afternoon, after a long day of work, Ethan sat down with Rachel. His eyes were full of determination, and for the first time in a long while, he seemed restless, as though he had something he needed to say. "Rachel," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've been thinking a lot lately about how I can make a difference, how I can give back. What you've done for me, it's changed my life, and I want to do something to help others, just like you've helped me." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I want to start a foundation for struggling families, for people who need support, just like you did. I want to give them hope." Rachel's eyes widened in surprise, and before she could respond, Ethan continued, "And I want you to help me lead it. You've already given so much. You've shown me what real strength looks like. Together we can do something amazing." As Rachel listened, she felt a surge of purpose. The kindness that had started in a simple moment in a grocery store had transformed both their lives. Now it was their turn to change the world. What a beautiful reminder of how one simple act of kindness can change lives forever. Ethan and Rachel's story shows us that even in our darkest moments, there's always a chance for healing, growth, and new beginnings. Their journey of support, strength, and resilience proves that no one is ever truly alone, and we can all make a difference in someone else's life. If you were moved by their story, please don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends and family. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Thank you for being part of our community. Together we can keep spreading kindness and hope.